My name's Matt Halperin. I'm 37 years old. I live just outside Seattle in a one-bedroom apartment I never bothered decorating. 11 years I worked at Northline Manufacturing, mostly keeping their plants from blowing up or falling apart from their own laziness. It was early April, gray sky, cold drizzle. I was in the office before 6, sipping garbage coffee and going through overnight incident logs like I always did. I wasn't flashy. I built the stuff that kept OSHA out and production moving. Emergency playbooks, safety briefs, inspection templates. The grind nobody thanked you for until it went missing. And then he showed up, Trevor Ames, new COO, barely 2 months in. His suit probably cost more than my rent. Walked straight to my desk like he was late for a photo shoot. No hello, no, how's your morning? Just a plain folder in his hand and that smug, ironed-out face like he was born in a leadership seminar. He lays down a page, just one, a receipt from a motel in Spokane. $385. I didn't even have to look. I knew the night. There was a solvent leak at the East Plant. Emergency call at 2:40 in the morning. Flights were grounded. Highway was iced. I drove it myself, shut the plant down before someone inhaled death. I used my own card. Procurement doesn't answer at that hour. I filed the receipt like always, marked it pending. Standard stuff. He says it's irregular. Finance flagged it as a misuse of funds. Misuse, like I pocketed it. Then, without sitting, without blinking, he says, "We're terminating your employment for policy violation. Please hand over your badge and laptop." I didn't make a scene. What was the point? I just set my mug down, still half full, and picked up my notebook. Gave him the badge. Some security kid, maybe 21, stepped beside me, avoiding eye contact like I had a bomb in my briefcase. In the elevator, I stared at the panel. 19 floors down, not a word said. My chest felt hollow but stable, like my brain already started drafting a checklist of what to do next. I'd spent too long being ready for this. Outside, Seattle was its usual wet sponge. My jacket soaked fast. But what burned through me wasn't the rain. It was what I remembered, all those templates and emergency procedures, built off hours, on my laptop, licensed to Northline under terms that Paperboy had clearly never read. I didn't waste time. I called Dana Pierce, my best friend since high school, and now a serious IP attorney who doesn't blink for less than $1,000 an hour. We met at a diner off 3rd. Cheap booths, hotter coffee. I laid out my files, my cloud-hosted playbooks, my audit logs, my PDFs with my name watermarked across every page. She flipped through everything, fast but careful. "They've been using this for how long?" 11 years, I said. "They paid for the first 3. Then they just stopped." She tapped the clause about paid usage. "You've been careful." "It wasn't paranoia," I said. "It was survival." She looked me straight in the eye. "What do you want to do?" I didn't even pause. "I want what's owed, and I want the lesson to stick." We didn't shake hands, didn't toast. We just left. She went to draft. I went to walk. Drizzle on my shoulders, binder under my arm, $385 in my rear view, and a company about to learn just how expensive cheap decisions can get. The motel receipt sat in its cheap frame on my desk, angled just enough to catch the edge of the window light. I didn't stare at it, just glanced now and then, like a label on a medicine bottle, something bitter you keep around in case you forget how you got sick. The first week after they dumped me, everything was too quiet. No 405 buzz, no urgent voicemails from shift leads who didn't know what to do with a leaking valve or a stuck override. I'd been trained to wake at the same time every day like a fire alarm. Now, nothing. Still, I kept checking the logs. Every morning, like clockwork, I opened my personal dashboard, the one tied to the cloud storage where all my templates, checklists, and briefings lived, not theirs. Mine, built from scratch, hosted on my license. 11 years of sweat, late nights, near misses, and real ones. The telemetry was standard stuff. Basic usage stats, timestamps, user counts, form load frequency. It flagged anomalies too, like if someone tried to strip the watermark or rename the fields. Nothing invasive, just business-grade usage tracking. That Tuesday, Tacoma's logs caught a red flag. Some junior engineer had pulled my lockout, tagout, step-by-step template and tried to rename it to Quick Start Safety or some other happy hour nonsense. Worse, they deleted the override sign-off box, the one that forces someone to own the risk. 2 days later, the whole thing backfired. Audit failure spike. A confined space permit showed as completed with 1 signature, not 2. My system tagged it as a near miss. I didn't have to guess what happened. Someone signed it solo, skipped the second check, and crossed their fingers. By Friday, I saw it in print. Small piece in a local business paper about Northline's temporary production slowed down due to procedural updates, which was code for, we fired the guy who built the rules and now we're trying to duct tape the holes. I texted Dana. We met again, this time at her office. I handed her a thumb drive with 11 years of version history, PDF exports, cloud access logs, and emails approving my license structure from the old regime. We pulled out the purchase records. They'd paid for the first 3 years of commercial use, then quietly stopped when no one was looking. She didn't blink, just pulled out a legal pad and started drawing columns. Plant by plant, module by module, month by month. When we finished, the total landed just under $2,240,000 in unpaid licensing fees. That didn't even include penalties or her billable hours. They really thought you were a W-2 drone, she muttered. Yeah, joke's on them. I was a vendor the whole time. They just forgot. She asked if I wanted to send the letter now or hold it. Quarter closes in 2 weeks, I said. Pain hits harder when it messes with financials. Let's wait. That weekend, I jogged the waterfront. I passed a dad teaching his kid to throw a baseball. Felt like a punch in the gut. I'd given my 30s to making idiots follow safety rules, and these two were out there actually building something that mattered. Sunday night, I sat on the couch and opened the dashboard. The logs spiked. Pasco pulled the emergency ventilation checklist 7 times in 40 minutes. Something must have happened. Small ammonia burp, probably. The kind of event you plan for and hope never hits. They were still using my system, still leaning on it like a crutch. Not because it was pretty, not because it was cheap, because it worked. I didn't feel proud. I didn't feel vindicated. I just felt necessary. There's a difference between being employed and being relied on. That night, I knew which one I was. Before bed, I printed another copy of that motel receipt and slid it into the frame. Not as a trophy, just a warning label for me. I woke up the next morning with the kind of clarity you get after you finally sleep more than 5 hours. Rain tapped the window like someone keeping time for me. I brewed coffee, opened my laptop, and the dashboard lit up like a wildfire. Monday at 9:10, Everett started hammering my pre-start hot work permit. 31 loads in just 20 minutes. Nobody trains like that. That was panic. Somebody tried to weld without proper sign-off, and a manager somewhere was sweating through his shirt, pretending everything was normal. It almost made me laugh. Almost. By noon, a regional safety blogger posted that Northline had paused welding in 2 bays due to documentation conflicts. I knew perfectly well what that meant. Someone stripped my sign-off chain, and now nobody could prove who authorized heat work. If there's one thing that shuts a plant down faster than a broken compressor, it's accountability no one wants to hold. I pictured Trevor standing in some glass conference room, hands on his hips, telling his team to focus on solutions. He loved that phrase. He said it like it came printed on the side of a motivational coffee mug he stared at every morning. He always talked like problems disappeared if you smiled at them long enough. Around 3:35, my phone buzzed with a personal number I recognized. Friend in procurement, quiet type, didn't text unless he had to. The message was short. 2 minor recordables in Yakima. Brass wants to know why sign-offs aren't sticking. I leaned back, coffee still warm in my hand, and watched the logs spike again. Someone kept pulling my emergency shutdown matrix, like they were trying to rebuild it manually. Good luck. You don't reverse engineer 11 years of close calls from scratch because your shiny new COO doesn't like how I filed receipts. At 4:12, my phone lit up with the Northline prefix. I let it ring until voicemail caught it. When I played it back, Trevor's voice was brittle and polite, asking if I could point the team in the right direction as a professional courtesy. That phrase tasted like spoiled milk. I called him back. I kept it short. You want things stabilized? Put the second signer field back, stop renaming documents, and run the pre-job briefs the way I wrote them. He tried to laugh it off. You're being emotional over a small policy issue. No, I said. I'm being practical. People are breathing fumes, and you don't have the playbook memorized. There was a long breath on his end, the kind you hear from someone chewing nails and calling it gum. He thanked me through his teeth. I didn't offer comfort. That night, I sent Dana a fresh packet of evidence: usage logs, version history, timestamps. She replied near 11, said the demand letter was almost done, and asked if I wanted to send now or after their ops review on Wednesday. Wednesday, I wrote back. Let them think they've stabilized. Tuesday brought a new crack. A supervisor in Spokane posted a nervous message on an internal forum thread I still had access to. Forgot to revoke my account, apparently. The line said, "Why did we delete the hold points?" No punctuation, no explanation, just fear dressed as curiosity. By late afternoon, Trevor's office blasted out some sunny PR memo about alignment with standardized practices. I heard from two old coworkers that plant managers forwarded the memo to their crews with quiet sarcasm. Everyone knew what alignment meant. It meant someone nuked the safety net and hoped nobody noticed. I sat in my kitchen with leftover chili, watching rain slap against the window, and felt something dangerous but honest. I wasn't enjoying the chaos. I was enjoying seeing the truth unmasked. The systems worked when they were respected. They failed when someone tried to cut a corner. For once, the cause and effect were visible. I slept harder than I had in months. No compressors, no alarms, no spinning mental checklists, just rain and quiet. I woke up the next morning, not angry, not bitter, but ready. I'd been background noise for years. Now they could hear me. The next morning, I woke up before the alarm, like my body still remembered the job that didn't want me. Rain smudged against the kitchen window, steady and cold, the way Washington breaks news without speaking. At 9:03 exactly, Dana's letter hit Northline's legal inbox. I watched the red receipts bounce back, one, then another. I poured coffee and opened my dashboard like I was checking storm patterns on a radar dish. The demand was simple and sharp as a nail. Unpaid license fees totaling $2,240,000. Legal costs outlined. 14 days to pay or cease all use and shut the procedures down cold. No drama, no pleading, just terms. At 9:21, an autoresponder from their general counsel. At 9:39, my inbox dinged again with an invite to a 10 o'clock call. Names listed like line items: Deputy GC, HR Director, Procurement Head, and Trevor Ames in his polished role as the man who fired the wrong engineer. I joined from my dining table. Dana sat beside me, peppermint gum slow between her teeth, posture like a court order could bounce off her. Northline's GC opened with the tone of someone used to winning. He started with work for hire. Dana cut him off by sliding the carve-out agreement forward so the camera could see the signature of the previous COO, dated and notarized. My ownership spelled out clean as drywall. Paper rustled. Someone muted their mic. You could hear the shift in oxygen when they pivoted to a different excuse, calling the amount excessive. Dana didn't blink. She offered the alternate path like she was reading a grocery list. Cease use immediately and owe nothing further. That's when HR cracked, voice climbing like a wire pulled tight. They said shutting down half the plants to rewrite procedures would cripple production. Dana let silence spread across the call until no one knew how to fill it. I watched the confidence drain from faces like water through a grate. Trevor broke first. He called it extortion, his voice stretched thin. I answered him slow. It's a bill for what you already used. Nothing personal, just the cost. He tried to talk over me. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. The logs already proved how deep they were buried. They asked for time to confer. We ended the call. I refreshed my dashboard. Module pulls spiked like fireworks on New Year's. Ops staff downloading every checklist they could get their hands on, trying to map dependencies before the floor dropped. Every panic click counted as usage and pushed the total higher. They didn't even see the trap. The irony tasted clean. Afterwards, Dana spread papers across my dining table, building Plan B like she'd been waiting to deploy it. If they contested ownership, she'd file for a temporary restraining order and escrow the disputed fees. She had templates ready, fully drafted. She wasn't guessing. She was ready to move. At 11:17, Trevor left another voicemail. His voice was sugar-coated panic. He talked about reasonable middle ground, hinted at an NDA, said we could Work this out quietly." Dana listened, shook her head once like a judge setting down a gavel. "They want silence more than resolution," she said. "They're scared of the paper trail." I didn't let myself celebrate. I put on my jacket, stepped into the wet chill, and walked the loop around Green Lake. The wind cut across the water, sharp and unfriendly, but honest. My shoulders loosened with every lap. I wasn't out for revenge. I wasn't trying to crush anyone. I was just done being a ghost in my own work. People ran past with earbuds in. Ducks moved like little engines through the gray water. For years I'd kept everyone safe but me. I felt the difference now. Felt it like something in my spine finally straightened. Halfway around the loop, I stopped, tightened my laces, and kept walking forward into the rain. Thursday morning came with headlines. I had just cracked open the peanut butter when a local Boise news station ran a segment on a forklift incident at Northline's western site. Minor injury, nothing fatal, but the anchor's voice sharpened when she said, "Documentation lapses under review." 10 minutes later, my dashboard looked like it was in cardiac arrest. Plants all over the map were yanking my near-miss analysis and root cause tree templates like oxygen masks in a nosedive. It wasn't one or two panicked supervisors. This was top-down scramble. That told me someone upstairs had just realized the floor was no longer solid. At 10:06, I got a call invite. The CFO and Deputy General Counsel this time, no Trevor. Dana and I joined from her office side by side. The CFO started soft, corporate damage control voice. He floated a global release, full confidentiality, and a bundled ongoing license. Dana didn't flinch. "Past use is past use. The invoice and legal fees stand," she said. "Future license is a separate deal at market rates, and there's no NDA that blocks my client from stating factual vendor history." The GC cleared his throat, stalling like someone hoping to find a better card in the deck. The CFO finally asked for a ballpark on the annual license. Dana just said, "Depends on scope, number of users, and whether you want support. We can model it, but we won't guess." They said they'd get back to us. We left it there. After lunch, I sat down with a second cup of coffee and barely had time to sip it before my phone buzzed again. One of the junior ops analysts at Northline had accidentally published an internal systems diagram to a public-facing wiki. It only stayed up for maybe 90 minutes before they yanked it, but it was long enough for a small industry site to scrape it and repost. My templates were dead center, drawn in between production and maintenance like the very spine of the operation. Every checklist I'd ever built, clearly marked, clearly labeled, clearly not theirs. By close of business, Northline's stock dropped about 2.5%. That's when I got a text from my buddy in finance, the one who only texts when it matters. "Emergency board session at 7. You didn't hear it from me." I didn't respond, just sat with it. Let the data speak louder than I ever could. At 4:30, Trevor called me directly. I picked up because I wanted to hear it from him. "You're ruining reputations," he said, voice thin, like he was running out of air. "No," I said, "you're ruining your own by not reading contracts and ignoring the crews who keep your sites running." He shifted tone, tried the tough guy act. "You'll never work in this town again." I kept it flat. Already had 2 companies reach out this week asking for licenses. I'm not begging, I'm billing. He hung up without another word. The kind of silence that sounds like paper tearing in your ear. At 8:22, I got another message from my friend in finance. They're done with him. No punctuation, no emoji, just the final nail. I didn't text back. I stood by the window in my apartment and watched the city go soft with night. Buildings blinking, brake lights stacking, everything normal except the air in my chest that finally felt like mine again. At 9:11, Dana called. Her voice was even. "Co-transition announcement just went live," she said. "Effective immediately. Interim COO named Avery Kwan. Meeting set for tomorrow to finalize payment and future use." I didn't say anything for a second, just nodded, even though she couldn't see me. The rain was still falling, but it didn't feel heavy now. It felt clean. I slept like I used to after back-to-back 12-hour shifts, dead, honest, and with no alarms set. Friday morning, I stood in front of the same elevator that had once taken me down, with a guard at my elbow. Now I was headed up with Dana beside me, both of us silent, not tense, just focused. Same walls, same brushed steel panel, whole different weight riding up. We walked into the conference room at 9 sharp. No one made us wait, Deputy GC, CFO, Procurement Manager, and across the table, Avery Kwan, the new interim COO. First thing I noticed, she had no entourage, no assistant, no flash. Just a plain folder, black pen, and a look that said she'd read every page twice before we walked in. Dana and I sat. No one made introductions, no one wasted breath. The CFO slid a one-page agreement across the table toward me. We accept the $2,240,000 in licensing and $44,900 in legal fees. Payment will be wired in 3 business days. I nodded once. My chest felt tight, but not in a bad way. Just full. Like I'd been holding air for a long time and finally let a little out. I leaned forward. So, what about moving forward? Avery looked straight at me, not Dana. The crews want to keep the playbooks. They work. Ripping them out mid-cycle would do more harm than good. Dana opened her binder and laid out the new terms. 3-year commercial license, unlimited internal use within the current product scope, annual fee of $384,000 billed quarterly, optional support at time and materials capped at 40 hours per quarter. Procurement raised eyebrows but said nothing. CFO looked over. Mutual non-disparagement? Dana nodded. For public statements only, and confidentiality on the specific financial terms, but Matt can still list Northline as a client and describe his role factually. Fair, Avery said. We're not trying to rewrite history. She brought up telemetry next. We'll need to confirm how usage data is handled. I pulled my notes. It tracks module loads, user counts, exception flags, no content capture, no personal data. Northline's security rep, seated near the door, gave a nod. Acceptable. We went down the checklist. API keys, plant access codes, a deprecation plan if they decided to migrate later. Avery took notes, no assistant needed. Then I said, 1 non-negotiable, sign-off fields stay. If anyone wants to strip them, it has to be documented as a risk acceptance. Avery didn't blink. She actually smiled. Agreed. The deputy GC cleared his throat. We'll issue a formal statement internally. It won't name you, but it'll close the loop for leadership and legal. Dana looked at me. I gave her the nod. I'm not here for apologies. I'm here for terms. He said, understood. We stood. Papers were signed. No handshakes, just clean execution. Walking out, the hallway looked exactly like it did that morning. I got walked to the elevator by a kid too nervous to make eye contact. Same lighting, same carpet. But now, I wasn't someone's direct report. I wasn't a ghost they could erase with a cheap excuse. I was a vendor with leverage, and leverage has memory. In the elevator, Dana bumped her shoulder into mine. Terms, not favors, she said. I said it back without thinking. Terms, not favors. It felt good in my mouth. Final, grown up. The wire hit on Tuesday. I watched the deposit land while eating toast. No big reaction, no fist pump. Just opened the laptop, took a screenshot of the balance, saved it under a boring file name, and shut the lid. There was a kitchen chair that had wobbled since I moved in. I grabbed my tools, flipped it over, and finally fixed it. That night, I ate a proper steak for the first time in months. Didn't check my phone once during the meal. Didn't feel the need to explain that to anyone. I slept like a man who no longer trades his peace for permission. I registered the business under the name Morton Field Systems LLC. No branding consultant, no focus group. Just something steady, neutral, and forgettable enough to fit on a purchase order without raising eyebrows. I wasn't launching a soda empire. I was selling clarity. Most mornings started the same way. Coffee, dashboard, edits. I pulled up old notes and turned them into clean, idiot-proof tools. Fewer blocks of text, more checkboxes. Hazard trees that made sense even if you'd been up 20 hours. Lockout guides that didn't need a second read. Pre-start cards that didn't waste space explaining why breathing ammonia is bad. 2 guys I used to work with reached out. One in Bend, the other down in Fresno. Both had jumped ship to smaller ops and wanted to bring in my systems. I gave them the same terms Northline got. Nothing hidden, nothing inflated. And no special treatment just because we used to eat cold pizza in the same control room. A week later, a small food plant in Tacoma emailed about an allergen changeover checklist. They'd had a scare, no recalls, but too close for comfort. We did a fast license. I tailored the template in under an hour, and their ops manager emailed that same night saying they finally slept through their shift without checking logs every 30 minutes. That kind of feedback stuck more than the check did. I updated my telemetry too, made it even more transparent. Just plant codes and usage stats. No personal names, no snooping. People don't mind data if they know you're not building dossiers behind their backs. Privacy wasn't a favor. It was the backbone of trust, and trust was the only thing I couldn't afford to lose again. Once a month, Avery and I jumped on a 15-minute call. No filler, no warm-up. Just what broke, what worked, and what's still a headache. That was her phrase, not mine. She didn't bother with buzzwords, and I respected that a lot. After their first quiet quarter, she sent an email. 3 words, we slept. Thanks. I forwarded it to Dana with the subject line. Worth it. I'd hung the motel receipt above my desk by then, behind glass. Same one that started this whole thing, not as a grudge, just a reminder. That slip of paper was how much it cost for someone to treat me like a rounding error. Now, it sat next to a clean balance sheet and a full work calendar. One Saturday afternoon, I repotted a jade plant that had somehow survived the fluorescent nightmare of my old office. I clipped a cutting, stuck it in a small clay pot, and wrote a tag. Water weekly, read the run book. No smiley face, just instructions. I dropped it off at Northline's front desk and told the guard it was for Avery's crew. He asked if I wanted to wait, maybe hand it off myself. I told him no thanks and left before anyone made it a thing. Moments were for people who needed recognition. I'd had enough applause to last a lifetime, and most of it came right before they shoved me out the door. Now, I said no more often. No to scope creep dressed up as just a small tweak. No to unpaid reviews that looked like favors but felt like pickpocketing. No to after-dinner calls unless someone was bleeding or on fire. I'd learned that boundaries didn't make you cold. They made you sustainable. It felt like getting older in the best possible way. Less impressed by titles, more impressed by hands that knew what they were doing. I didn't need a team of 30. I needed 5 smart ones who followed the checklist. And if they didn't, they could pay someone else to learn the hard way. 6 months in, the Northline site posted an engineering update. No press release, no names, just a quiet blog entry under company culture and safety. It talked about budgeting for maintenance, respecting third-party licenses, and treating operational procedures like utilities. Not as favors, not as personality-driven tools, but as infrastructure. It was dry, almost too dry, which meant it was written for legal and approved by finance. But it hit the right tone. No victory lap, no dramatic confession, just a small course correction that said, "We got it wrong, and we're working on it." The comments section stayed calm. A few senior techs thanked the company for being transparent. One ex-employee wrote, "This feels like leadership," and nobody flamed him for it. That's how you know culture's actually shifting, when you can say something positive without being called a suck-up. My phone buzzed about 10 minutes later. "Congrats, man. I know that's you. Bet you wrote the checklist they just started following." I didn't respond. Just sent a thumbs-up emoji and went back to sanding the back porch rail. The wood had swollen from a wet spring, and I wanted it smooth before sealing. Little work that made a difference later. My kind of thing. That same week, a plant out in Kansas signed a 2-year deal for full access to my modules. No haggling, no drama. Just good questions and fast paperwork. A day after that, a lumber mill in Oregon tagged me on a private forum, looking for a one-site pilot on hazard isolation forms. I sent over the starter bundle with a clean license. They paid within 48 hours, and I didn't need to say a word on a Zoom call. My calendar filled up without recruiters or networking events. No booths, no business cards, just solid referrals and people who already knew what they needed. Dana checked in, but not about legal threats this time. Just estate planning. "Put half that big check somewhere boring," she told me. "No crypto, no startup plays, bonds, slow growth. The kind of boring that keeps the lights on during a lawsuit." I listened. Boring felt safe for the first time in my life. That weekend, I posted a 1-page PDF called How to Respect a Maintainer, free. Just a simple read. Honor the terms, don't strip safety sign-offs, pay for what you use, and report issues without blaming the last guy who touched it. No logo, no link to my shop. Just a quiet set of rules that worked in places where people still used radios and clipboard checklists. The next day, I got an email from a site supervisor in Ohio. Said he'd downloaded the pre-job cards and handed them out at a toolbox talk. "These don't feel like homework," he wrote. "Crew actually filled them out without whining." I reread that message twice, saved it. Stuff like that reminded me why I still did this at all. I skipped every conference that quarter, ignored panel invites, even from people I liked. That scene never fit me. I didn't need to be on stage to make change stick. I'd rather sit in the bleachers with my brother at a league game and leave at the 7th inning just to beat the traffic. That Sunday, I gave the motel receipt frame a fresh wipe. The paper inside hadn't faded, and I wanted to keep it that way. Memory fogs when life gets smooth. That little rectangle reminded me what it cost to not speak up, what it meant to walk away clean, with your name still attached to your work. That night, I walked the neighborhood. No music, no calls, just the sound of gravel under boots and sprinklers clicking off. There's winning, and then there's finishing clean. I wasn't chasing the first one anymore. A few weeks later, a blogger messaged me asking if I'd give a tell-all on that COO fiasco. His words, not mine. Said the story would get clicks fast. Leadership failure, whistleblower angle, lessons learned from the edge. He wanted the inside scoop, the drama, something that would travel. I sat with it for maybe 5 minutes. Then I typed my usual line: pay for what you use, give credit, do safety like you mean it. I didn't name names, didn't draw arrows, just principles. He didn't reply. The same week, a mid-sized competitor from Illinois reached out with a generous offer, a fat retainer to write a white paper comparing their practices to Northline's, heavy on critique, light on nuance. They wanted blood dressed up as insight. I told them I'd write about process, not people. They passed. I didn't lose sleep over it. There's money that makes you light, paid, clear, honest, and there's money that sticks to your ribs and makes you feel like you owe someone every time you turn on your laptop. I wasn't carrying weight for anybody again. That Sunday, just after 8 p.m., I got an email from a junior manager at a new client site. "Quick question," she wrote. "Can we delete the hold point if the task is routine?" I didn't answer. Not that night. Monday morning, I opened the template, added a note under the conditions box, and re-uploaded it with version tracking. No inbox replies, no side conversations, small discipline. That's what keeps you from becoming someone else's emergency hotline. I didn't leave a job to build another cage. A few days later, Avery forwarded an internal note from Northline's board. They wanted an annual audit of third-party content, licenses, terms, usage reports. Just a quiet effort to never get blindsided again. She didn't ask for a custom tool. She just wrote, "Any recommendations?" I sent back a one-page checklist they could use on their own. Simple, clear, no charge. She replied a few hours later with one word: appreciated. That's how we operated. Low heat, high trust, no favors, no tiptoeing. Just the kind of working relationship that didn't need follow-up calls or calendar invites. Later that month, I took my niece to a Rainiers game. 4th row, first baseline. She asked why I didn't work at the big building anymore. I thought about explaining corporate structure, licensing law, and procedural enforcement. Instead, I said, "I work for the checklist now." She nodded and handed me her cup to hold, while she wiped ketchup off her fingers. On the drive home, I looked over at her asleep in the passenger seat, head leaning on her seatbelt, pink shoelaces kicked loose. The highway was quiet. Rain hit the windshield in light, steady ticks. That's when it hit me. I wasn't playing small anymore. I was playing square. No one holding the leash. No one rushing to take credit. Just the work, done right, standing on its own. I got home, took off my shoes, and stood by the window. The jade plant on the sill had doubled in size. It leaned toward the morning light with no help from me. I let the quiet settle and didn't reach for my phone. I didn't need to. The motel receipt stayed where it always did, framed near the monitor, under the edge of the window light. Corners still crisp, print still sharp, and the number still dumb. $385. It wasn't about revenge. Never was. That slip of paper was a label on a jar I opened whenever I started to forget how fast a company can toss you the second you make them uncomfortable. Especially when you're the one who kept the alarms from going off. They fired me over that receipt, and I responded with an invoice. Both were just paper, but only one had interest rates built into it, mine. Theirs came from panic. Mine came from patience. My paper said, read your contracts, honor the tools that keep your crews alive, and don't confuse someone quiet with someone you can walk over. Northline learned the expensive way. They paid for past use, signed a future license, and published a bland little post about respecting operational documentation. No names, no credit, but the message was clear to anyone who'd been paying attention. I learned too. I didn't need a badge to matter, didn't need a title or a desk on the 19th floor. What I needed were clean terms, a spine, and the stubbornness to hold the line when it counted. Now, my days were quieter and sharper. Coffee, a jog if the knees were willing, then a check on my dashboard while the plant code scrolled like clockwork. I'd tweak a template here and there, add clarity, remove clutter, write in plain English, make sure a second shift guy with 4 hours of sleep and grease in his eyes could still follow it without screwing up. Every now and then, Trevor's name would float into my head. I'd picture that mirror-polished smile cracking in a boardroom. Not to enjoy it, but just to register the cost of ignoring the guy who built the tools. You pay either way. You pay with attention, or you pay with damage. The jade plant on my window ledge had filled out, its thick green leaves pressing toward the glass, like it wanted to get back to the job. I kept it watered, wiped the dust off the leaves, trimmed it when it needed it. Quiet maintenance, same as the work. I pushed one last update before dinner, a small improvement to a lockout checklist. The commit message was short and clean, clarified valve check, step 3. That was the whole story. Reliable work at a fair price. That's what I sold. That's what I stood behind. They thought a motel bill could erase me. Turns out it did the opposite. It set my value in ink I should have used years earlier. I didn't shout, I didn't beg, I sent the invoice, finished the job, and let the ledger settle itself where it mattered. Quick one before you head out. What boundary do you need to set at work this week? If you've got hype, tap it, subscribe and like. Drop your answer below.